If you do a podcast, especially the Agile podcast, aka Arguing Agile, for so long, you end up with a whole bunch of topics that you cannot cover in a normal podcast because they don't really lend themselves to discussion, a long form discussion, but they're still worthy of being discussed. So that's today. We had a topic come up recently at a networking event that we were both at, and the topic was, and I quote, Agilists never take accountability.
What a statement to make. There are a couple of strong words in that statement. Never is one. And accountability, Agilists never take accountability? I don't know. I think the person who said that had something else on their mind that they weren't able to relay, I guess, in the time allowed at that social event. But fundamentally, if you look at this at face value, Agilists never take accountability. I mean, if you're an Agilist, you know who we are. If you're an Agilist, how would you feel about this? Please let us know in the comments down below. Personally, my own opinion on this is it is a bunch of baloney, because Agilists typically work with teams, and team members take accountability for collectively the team's effectiveness and outcomes.
Actually, I know exactly what the counterpoint is. Like, this is what happens when you work for psychopaths for too long. The counterpoint here is when accountability is not on one individual, it's on nobody. That's the counterpoint that I hear very clearly ringing in my head. Usually coming from a psychopath trying to pin down or blame.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So yeah, I have seen that. I'm not supposed to agree, but on this point, I've seen this myself, right? These psychopaths that of which you speak, I've seen them. They say, well, where's that one neck to choke? Yeah, what a horrible phrase. What a horrible phrase. So yes, people looking to pin the blame on someone, they're very keen to make sure they have a name on a spreadsheet usually. And they're very keen and intent on making it go from green to red. So these are the people that say, we need accountability. In other words, I need to blame somebody, person, right? That's right. And they don't buy into this concept of the team operating as a team of n number of individuals.
So the dictionary.com definition of accountability is the state of being accountable, liable, or answerable. Okay, accountable. Subject to the obligation to report, explain, or justify something. Responsible, answerable. Capable of being explained, explicable, explainable. Subject to the obligation to report, explain, or justify something. Agilists never take accountability. Agilists never report, explain, or justify what they're working on. When you read the definition and then you go back, it kind of sounds ridiculous. So I wanted to read the definition to know how better to dispute from the side to say Agilists never take accountability. I'm assuming that when they say Agilists, they're not talking about developers and product owners. I assume they're talking about Scrum Masters. Let's get through the assumptions.
Let's assume that for a minute and go with it.
Okay. All right, good. Let's say we're talking about Agile coaches and we're talking about Scrum Masters. Never take accountability. The person exclaiming this statement, Agilists never take accountability in this type of organization now, is this CTO, director of development, somebody like that, who says, well, I don't see a reason to hire Scrum Masters because they never take accountability. Meaning they can't report, explain, or justify when commitments that I make on their behalf are missed.
Yeah, I can see, Charlie, the CTO's point of view here, right? If you are a Scrum Master worth your salt, you're going to say, here's what's going on. In all honesty, in full transparency, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Mm-hmm. And that is not quite what he wants to hear, because he's going to sanitize your message anyway before it filters upwards or laterally from him. He doesn't want to show the team, quote unquote, failed, because failure is quite honestly frowned upon, right? Yeah, right there. I can see the point of view of a person like that saying, Agilists never take accountability, because I don't have one person who I can say, hey, you failed. Right? Yeah. Even if they don't report that up the chain, right? They want to be able to blame a person, whereas here's the team coming at them saying, the team did this, the team did that. So I can see that perspective. If you work for somebody like that, I'd say keep that resume updated.
The interesting part about accountability, that little dance that I just did, doesn't really work on product that much. I mean, I guess it works, but it only goes so far. Especially if you're responsible for the P&L of the product, if you have actual dollar figures tied behind what you're doing, you could say like, hey, we spent 20% of the last 2-3 sprints on learnings. These are the things we learned. Oh, well, you failed, Brian. Your team failed. Well, actually, we failed, but through the things that we did not deliver, this is what we learned. We tried to make this database change because you wanted this feature, and we learned once we did it that we blew up some other thing because everyone that I have on my development team were not the individuals that created the system in the first place. So we learned that something that only the people who created the system in the first place that have been gone 10 years or whatever would have known. And now we understand that deep part of the code.
I think when you have leadership that take that position and say, but Brian, you failed, even though you learned stuff that was extremely valuable. I find it useful to turn that into terms that they understand. We didn't fail. We saved this amount of money because had we not learned this, we would have put out bad code, et cetera, right? Yeah. So, then they can understand, oh yeah, glad you didn't do that. So I think you need to kind of do a reciprocal dance, if you will.
I also, since we did the podcast on Carol Dweck's mindset with Ed,
fantastic podcast.
Shout out to Ed. It's like a quick hour and 15-minute podcast. Yeah, real quick. So we did the podcast on mindset. This is what I was talking about. And the podcast on mindset, the book makes it a point to say you don't fail until you start blaming. That's a quote from somebody in the book. I don't remember who it was.
It's a great quote.
Yeah, I'll remember it in the editing, and I'll try to throw it on the screen, unless I'm too lazy, and then I'll just cut this out. Because that's the idea here is like, oh, Agilists never take accountability. Well, what do you mean here? Do you mean we're not going to blame people? Is that what you mean? Agilists push back against the blame culture? Because if so, I'll agree with that. And also, like, I'll immediately turn that file around and be like, so what do you actually do here in a tech? Like, the Bobs are in the room and it's like, oh, you're the one guy blaming. Let's do a little introspection. Look at what you do during the day.
Other than blaming people?
Looks like you basically professionally deflect off to other people and blame people. And, we've talked a million times on podcasts. This is not really a reason to go super in depth here. Just get rid of that person and see what happens in your organization.
Yeah, it's like throwing out the bad apple, in a bushel of apples, right? It can only get better because you're getting rid of the rot, basically. Maybe some will say I'm a bit extreme on this, but I don't think so. I mean, other people will say, look, Agilists never take accountability. I don't know what your developers are doing all day, right? I don't know. Well, stop micromanaging them then. Of course, they're not going to be forthcoming with what they're doing if they know that you're going to nitpick away at them.
I just don't see a problem with going to your team. Like, if you're a leader in the organization, going to your team, showing up at one of your team events, let's say, for example, and say, hey, I'm not seeing XYZ out of this team. I need more XYZ.
Oh, that is okay. That's within their prerogative to do that, right? But it's when they come in and say, you, Fred, you, Mary, right? That is where I have an issue.
Sure.
Because now you're putting one person on the spot.
Sure.
Then the team's trying to do their best to deliver as a team.
Sure, but just trying to run with the spirit. I'm trying to defend this. Trying to run with the spirit of this bullet point. Agilists never take accountability. If I'm a leader in the organization and I constantly have a Scrum Master from the team saying, well, you have to talk to the team. You have to talk to the team. Well, maybe I know one person on the team is not delivering as fast as other people, or people in the organization are complaining about one specific person on the team and the team is not dealing with it. Then I'll be like, well, you guys are just not, you're not taking accountability for, if you want to self-manage, you want to self-organize, self-manage, whatever iteration of the Scrum Guide we're on, and you want to deal with that person internally, like, you have to do it. Like, don't leave it on my random management plate of random things that I have to take care of, because I'm going to delegate it to you, and then I want to know that it's been done. I feel if we're going to go into that category, like, hey, the team should be identifying the people that are in need of training, the people that are maybe not working as fast as other people or not catching on or whatever, and then get them up to speed. If the team would like that to be something that is continued to be delegated to the team rather than to some other lead or to a manager or something like that, the team needs to show that they can deal with those situations. I don't know if the team proving they can deal with those situations. I don't know if that's different than accountability. I kind of see it as the same as accountability.
It is the same. Okay. I think some of these symptoms that you describe, somebody's not up to speed with something or whatever. These are self-limiting if you're truly acting as a team, because you talk about them as a team and then you chart the course of action to redress that deficiency. So I think those things, if you trust the team and leave them alone to figure these things out, I think they're self-limiting.
Yeah. If management is hearing things in the organization, or if management is feeling things in the organization, or management just like susses things out, how would they communicate? Would they go through the Scrum Master, through a team lead, through a senior member of the team, like who would they go through to communicate, like, hey, I need something more from this team, or I need, I hear that developer whatever is combative, or I hear that, you guys always miss your deadlines. I've been in an organization where managers have like 30 teams, just a completely unreasonable amount of teams. I'm going to try to empathize with the overworked manager who just simply doesn't have time to come sit with your team to see what the real problems are, and is just going to delegate to somebody to say, hey, look, you're on the team. You're a smart person. You're somebody. I don't know what, senior, Scrum Master, whatever product. I don't know what it is. Hey, bring it up to your team. Make a decision. Let me know what the plan is so that I have confidence it's being handled. So if I'm ever asked, and usually I'm not ever asked, but if I'm ever asked, I can say, hey, the team's got it. This is what they did. This is what they took. This is the evidence they're built, and that kind of stuff. Like, who does that?
Yeah, so that's a great point. I want to just double click on what you said. The team's job collectively, you can break it down into individual roles if you like. It ultimately boils down to, you need to make your boss look good. That's what it boils down to. Yeah. So if they're asked in your example and they don't have a decent answer to that question, then that's not a good thing, right? As far as who that person is, more often than not, it is the Scrum Master that's pulled aside and been asked these things.
Yeah.
Sometimes it depends, I suppose, right? Sometimes maybe it's the product owner too. What are we doing? Why are we always missing the goal? Are you setting realistic goals? Those sorts of things. But typically it's the Scrum Master, right? Your team, the team you're on, right?
I can see it being the product owner from a business perspective. Like, hey, how come your product doesn't make more money? Hey, basically, if someone's approaching you with a business metric, I could see them funneling through the product owner. But if the Scrum Master truly is a decentralized member of leadership, a delegated piece of leadership down to the team, and the Scrum Master represents that piece, then I could see it being the Scrum Master.
I mean, more often than not, the Scrum Master is a non-delegated piece of management rather than leadership. So I'm choosing those words because that's typically what happens. They're report-centric as an organization. Yeah. And the Scrum Master is basically being interrogated, frankly.
But what should they be, though?
Well, so when you say what
the
ideal should be that they should be a trusted member of the organization, right? Mm-hmm. So leadership should basically set the goals and leave the Scrum Master to attain those goals. Now, of course, there could be precedents there where the Scrum Master needs to escalate for risks, etc. But in the normal, quote unquote, right, in the normal working environment, the Scrum Master should not be the whipping person, basically. And you do see that quite often in these organizations where they roll up through technology, IT management, as opposed to leadership, who understand, hopefully, what motivates people, right? So that's what it should be. It should be, empower your Scrum Master and let them go ahead and deliver. And then just ask them what they need. That's what it should be. It sounds simple, but, I don't see that all too often. When I do see it, it's remarkably effective.
Yeah. I want to hard pivot into the PO's input on technical implementation. I was on a team one time where the team members were it was a mobile development team, a couple mobile developers, I think 2 mobile developers, one for Android, one for iOS, and a tester. And the tester would basically do some manual tests and walk through their stuff. And I was a manager in this organization. I was also a product owner, but my product was not the mobile products. And I remember making a case to say, hey, you, the product person for mobile, you should really go with automated testing. You should stand up automated testing so that you don't have to, like, all these manual tests and all these manual regression tests and everything you run through, you won't run through them anymore. The automation will run. And I was like, you basically won't pay the cost of manual regression anymore. And you can repurpose your one tester that you have to do whatever. Get them close to the business. Bring them with you to business calls. Do whatever. Have them write documentation. Have them write release notes. Whatever you want. But get them out of this nonsense regression stuff that they're doing. And as the test manager at the time, I had automation people that I could have assigned if they wanted to pay that cost. But there was a cost to be paid. The idea is the entire application was manually tested. So in order to get it to a point where it's automated, as far as testing goes, they would have had to overcome a certain amount of what I think of as technical debt. There's no automation in place now for the application. And then once there is full, again, for the listeners, I'm doing super air quotes. Once your critical paths through the application are automated and you have automated reports going to your email every morning or whatever, or if you have a page that gives you, green, amber, whatever.
The rags.
Yeah. Then you don't have to think about it. Like there's a certain level of quality built into your application that you no longer have to think about, and it doesn't cost you anything more. Other than the tiny, tiny, tiny little cost of whatever the automation costs to run, right? And
nothing,
to maintain.
practically.
Which is practically nothing compared to the cost of change. So I bring up that story because I was in a similar discussion about the PO's input on what is like technical, like, hey, like you're the PO, but also like we don't need your input on technical implementation.
He's doing air quotes for people.
Yeah,
audio,
technical.
video rather.
Because it's not like business value. The customer's not going to see anything. I think the same thing as adding automated tests as I think of like rolling out your application through development pipelines, through release pipelines, for example, like the pipeline that sends your stuff out to test, and then once it clears test, and then it goes to stage, and once it clears stage, it clears production, and then if your automated tests run in each different environment, then it triggers the next deployment to happen to the next environment all the way through to production if you trust your deployment process and automated testing all the way through that cycle. It's like the development team would say, like, this is not a customer facing feature, so you as the product person, like your input's not really necessary about this.
Yeah, a lot of times, I see where you're going with that. A lot of times developers say, well, this is, you've given us the what, hopefully the why as well, and this is the how, so leave us alone, right? Your customer doesn't see that. Okay, but you delivered, or you finished that feature at a certain point in time, and because of your manual test strategy, there's a certain time it takes before we can clear all of that and put the thing into production. And if I was a product person, I would say, wait, that time that you're spending in running manual tests, that is tech debt right there, because you're sitting on value. Technically, in the lean way of thinking, that's waste.
Yeah.
So you're sitting there with something that's finished, ready to go.
Yeah.
But you're not able to get it out there fast because you're not using, release pipelines and things like that.
Sure.
So often when teams say, well, the customer doesn't see that, it's a bit of a curveball because they don't really mean that. Or if they do, they're not seeing the truth, right? Yeah. The customer doesn't see value early enough. You've done the work. Doing things like manual testing, it's an opportunity cost there is where I'm going with this, right? So pay down that up front, get that automated testing implemented, and you reap the benefits time and again. It automatically runs thousands of tests in a minute, right? Which you can't do. The computer is so fast. You can't do that manually. What's the value of that? Well, it's going to catch something out of those 1,000 tests that you're not going to catch until your manual tester goes through his 20, 30, 50 tests. They're not going to do 1,000. Otherwise, you never release anything to production. So there's an argument right there. The product owner, coming back to the point here, they're not necessarily saying how to do these. They're just saying to do these, right? So they're saying, well, maybe you should use automated testing because it will allow us to X, Y, Z.
Well, the team I remember the team in this point had a pretty serious back and forth. Again, I was not part of the team. I was just a manager, and the team had a pretty serious back and forth with that product owner in that organization, because the team was basically saying, like, we don't want to do the manual testing anymore. So basically the whole team minus the product owner approached me to help them convince the product owner that this was worthwhile to bring in and prioritize. Another way they could have gone about it is just to tell the product owner, like, hey, we don't want to make any changes anymore until you adopt XYZ, and they could have pitched that case, just like any other stakeholder says, like, I don't want to adopt your application unless you add this whatever PDF functionality or this other functionality, the ability to scan a document or something like whatever the intake form is where the prioritization happens. I bring this up because the way it's been asked to me now that I'm strictly a product owner and not a manager anymore was I don't understand why the product owner thinks that they even have input into should I work on this or not. To which my suggestion was if the product owner wants to have a manually deployed and manually tested application and continue at that level of technical debt forever, there may be reasons. You need to talk about those reasons.
Yeah.
Their pushback to this was it's an engineering decision, not a product decision to knock down that technical debt. And then we were done because I was like, I'm not discussing this anymore because first of all, it's not appropriate because it wasn't my product. I certainly have opinions, but also I'm not working on any of these teams. Where's the camera? I'm not working on any of these teams. I'm not the manager for any of these teams, and I only have influence over these teams, not control or management over any of these teams. The German 3. There it is. Here is my suggestion. Now it's up to you, the team members, to push it forward with your product person, and that's about it. Like who's right and who's wrong in that? How hard can the team members push? Is it actually the product manager's job, product owner's job to say like, I disagree with we need to knock down this technical debt now, and I'm good with this technical debt for X number of time or, you know what I mean?
I think it is.
Oh, okay.
No, I'll tell you why I think it is. Because it's the product owner who is responsible for delivering things sprint over sprint. So they may look at the team's suggestion, yes, there's this tech debt. To your point, yeah, put it in the backlog. And as a product owner, I might say, you make a point, but we really need to get this functionality out. So maybe I'll just weather that for a little while, 2 or 3 sprints or whatever it is, and then we'll bring it in as a tech debt remediation item.
Don't you only have a certain amount of time until like your development team just grabs pitchforks and gets tired of like pajama party deployments and oh boy.
Yeah, you do, unless you have access to these these minions that basically live offshore and you can say they don't like it. No, I know it's horrible. Yeah, you're right. I mean, you really as a product owner need to think hard about this, right? Yeah. Because it's going to impact you not in the long term, I would say, probably in the medium term, right? Yeah. I mean, in the short term, you might be under the gun to deliver a feature or two that the team's working on right now, maybe the next 1 or 2 sprints. But pretty quickly, you need to grapple with, these 2 things that we talked about, automation testing and using release pipelines. Otherwise, you are going to stumble over your own feet.
I mean, the big takeaway from that conversation was the perspective of the developers working on that product was, why should we go to the product owner for anything that doesn't have customer visibility? That was their perspective.
I understand it, but I don't agree with it. I think they need to work together as a team, right? The product owner and the developers, and each make their case, rather than say the customer doesn't see this and that's why we shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
I mean, you could extend the argument. It's a bit ridiculous, but you could say, why should we clean up our feature toggles once they've been turned on in production? Now they're live. Yeah. We introduced them 3 months ago. They're still in the code. Who cares? They don't see them. Yeah. Well, that's tech debt you're accumulating in that production code, right? Yeah. You really should be cleaning up after yourself.
Yeah.
So they could argue that, and some product owners could argue the other way, and they could say, well, why don't you bother going in there and doing all that stuff? Work on this new stuff for me, right? And that's, again, short-term thinking, but it prevails.
Oh, boy, I don't think this is discussed enough, this topic. Like, we might put a pin in this one and come back to it.
I'd like to.
Yeah.
I'd like to come back to it.
I don't think this one's talked about it. Like, this is like borderline. That was like, I'm doing the sandpaper motion. Like, it's like that borderline. This rubs directly up against like software craftsmanship and like that kind of movement of, why would we make it pretty? It works. Like, why don't touch things if they work? I could go super in depth on this topic about like, hey, if you look at like, you should be able to read a function quickly and understand what it means. And if you can't quickly understand what the function does, like let's take that one offline.
But Brian, I have 1,000 lines of comments in my function. If you read them, you'll understand. It's a 3-line function. German 3, sorry.
Oh yeah, we only do the German 3 on this podcast. I'm with you on reducing comments to a point. I had a director of development one time who was like, if the code is written well, you shouldn't need comments at all.
I don't agree with that.
I don't necessarily agree with that, but I understand what he was saying. But some code is very complex.
Agreed.
So I don't 100% agree, but also my technical competence level is nowhere near where his was. So if I try to have the technical competence level of everybody on my team at a very high level, and I spend a lot of time and energy into basically internal training and stuff like that to make sure that every developer I hire gets to that same minimum technical competence level, then I would be in line with what he was talking about.
I still don't agree, because there are some things that you need to make clear to those that read the code behind you. Mm-hmm. I think this idea of self-documenting code is nonsense. I see people documenting code for the sake of documenting code. Like they'll just say, I equals I plus 1 or I plus, whatever it is, whatever language you use. And then the comment next to it just says increment I. Well, duh, right? So why?
Yeah, that's not
right?
useful.
I know. So this is what minimal but useful commenting is an art. And not every, like to your point, yeah. I mean, we need to invest in developers to make sure they reach that level. This is where some level of coding standards are warranted, I feel, so that when somebody new comes in, somebody else who's been through that can take them under their wing. Pair programming is an ideal way to do it.
Sure.
If that's what's afforded at your in your shop.
I mean,
sometimes though it's difficult. I grant you that. Like, let's say you're not just pair programming, but you're swarming, and people are just busy. Okay, just have somebody going after you and adding the comment. They're part of the mob.
Yeah.
They understand what's going on. They're swarming, but that's no excuse to not put any comments in. A long time ago, I was at a hospital. I was actually coding then, and my boss, who was very technical, could read the code, but he would still say, if you're not here, how would somebody know what this does?
Right.
And he insisted on the comments being plain English language, nothing technical. Yeah, pass this into this array means nothing to somebody new. It's like, why? Just say validate postal codes from the post office database or whatever. I mean, that's meaningful at least, right?
We could do a whole podcast on and get a guest in specifically to talk about software craftsmanship and all these little like in-depth topics, because I have my own kind of beliefs crafted on my own experience in this topic. I would say like 6 months past when I originally wrote a script. I have no memory of writing the script at all. So basically, I'm reading somebody else's code at that point.
When you end up swearing at a piece of code and go, who wrote this crap? And then you realize it was you?
It was me. It's even worse for me because I had junior people in the department at that point, and I bring them over and I would say like, hey, step through this code with me. They were like, whose code is it? Oh, it's mine. And I have no idea what it does. All I know is it does this is the outcome I'm trying to get out of this code. And it does it. I just can't, I don't understand how I got there. But I wrote this like 6 months ago.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm a big fan of bringing, so if you're in a shop where your developers develop something and another group is basically going to support it, like operations or production support group, I'm a big fan of bringing those guys in during development so they understand how the code is written. And they would be very quick to point out when something is not obvious, right?
Yeah.
I think it just all is contextual as well. It depends on the language you're using.
Yeah, I could talk the whole podcast on this topic. We should have a podcast specifically on
We
this.
should. Let's make a note of that. I can think of somebody to bring in for that too.
Okay, good. Another hard pivot, since staying in line with our potpourri theme of the podcast, is I recently was asked, how do you work with multiple products that operate under one suite of products without cannibalizing any one of the products?
I feel like this is a particularly fragrant piece of the potpourri. They're all fragrant, but this one has a nice aroma. How to work on multiple products
under one suite.
Under a single suite.
You have multiple products. They have synergy with one another. Maybe they use similar data, or maybe they use the same data from the database or whatever, but they don't cannibalize each other.
Yeah, I mean, what immediately springs to mind, and me at least, is, product suites like Microsoft Office.
Yeah.
Right. And you have Word and Excel, et cetera, that are part of it.
Actually, Microsoft Office is a great example because in all the Office tools, you can make things bold, italicize, change the font, do whatever, delete, copy, paste. So like you have some functions that are available. So that's a great example from that perspective.
How to do this? That's the topic here. How to do this, right?
How to do it, yeah.
I think one is to really recognize, first of all, the boundaries of each of the two products. Let's just take two for now.
Sure.
It can get complex.
Sure.
A and B. Let's call them A and B.
Yeah.
And to recognize the boundaries of intersection, right? On this Venn diagram of A and B, like how close are they? And then the degree of overlap between those two, right? So I don't mean in that plane, like in a Venn diagram.
Yeah.
I mean, how much truly is shared for the customer when they look at something? Will they even see B when they look at product A? And then what is your strategy? Do you want to give each product characteristics where they look like they're standalone, but they're part of a suite?
Yeah.
Or do you want commonality across them, like in Office, right?
Yeah.
Microsoft Office.
Yeah.
Every ribbon looks the same when it comes to simple functions, right? Like you said, bold, italicize, underline, etc. And all the shortcuts are the same. Do you want that, or do you want uniqueness, but the products are part of a suite? I'm trying to think of a suite like that, but I can't come up with it.
No, Microsoft Office is a great example to stick with. Like, stick with Word and Excel. One is basically for replicating books, and the other is replicating tables for some reason, like tabular data, basically working with data. If I'm going to attack this subject that we're talking about now, not multiple products, not cannibalizing each other, I would say, first of all, segment your users for each application. And if the users for the applications truly are the same, Oman Bryan Software Development Company,
The infamous
that we might sell tomorrow, so you better keep your resume polished. If we develop two applications, both for people working on word processing documents, and they're separate applications, what the hell are we doing with our lives?
This is why we need to sell the company. No, seriously though, what I agree with you. This is what I was trying to say with the overlap, right? I'll give you another example. Let's stick with Word and Excel. Both of these products need the ability for the user to print.
Yeah.
Right? You wouldn't develop that twice. You would develop a module that prints, you know, and then just bolt it into each of those. It's the same module, right? So how does that answer this point? Well, you're not cannibalizing one product, doing it differently here and here, because that's a sour UX for the person to have to remember that they have to, hit Control Function Alt P in one product and just Control P in another one, right? It should be a consistent UI experience for them, or UX for them. That is one way, but cannibalizing the other. Here's where my head is going with this question, right? I'm trying to stay with Word and Excel, but any two products, when you have a piece of functionality that's not core to that product and a piece of functionality that is not core to product B as well, A and B, and you're developing those just for those two, that is when you're cannibalizing, because you're basically taking away the need for a user to even get to product B if they can do some, or even if it's awkwardly, some things in product A, they won't buy your product B. That's the cannibalization to me more than anything else. Kind of limiting your opportunities there.
If I was a product manager for Word and I was like, I want Word to be able to open any Excel document and show it in the Word document the same way you would show it in Excel, I would expect my director of product or whatever, or product officer or whatever you have in the organization to be like, why would you want to do that? Well, it sounds like a waste of time. Why don't they just use Excel to open Excel files? Or for Word to process all of the formulas that Excel can process.
Which it does very poorly, by the way. And this is where I think you had that kind of gray area where they came up with, what did they call them? Plugins and stuff like that to be able to do something.
Yeah.
If you're going to support plugins and you're not charging for them anyway, what are you doing? It's a gray area. I don't think we've got clean-cut examples with Word and Excel with cannibalizing products. I think you were onto something when you said identify who is your user persona for each one.
What I want to get from this topic before we get out of this topic, before we pivot to something else, is all of your products have to connect all the way back up to your corporate strategy.
Amen.
Or multiple strategies.
Sure.
It could be more than one.
Yeah.
And then your strategy or strategies, your strategy empowers and informs the product vision. Your product vision leads to goals, and your goals create the roadmap for your product. Hopefully, all of your product goals are not the same for all your products. And hopefully your vision is not all the same for all your products. So if your product vision for Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, Visio, whatever, anyone use Visio anymore? If all of those visions, corporate strategies and product visions are all boilerplate exactly the same, you have a problem.
Absolutely.
You should seek to solve that problem first before we're dealing with this question.
Yeah, you have product fuzziness.
Yeah, you have a real problem. And then I would take this to the next step, which is, hey, let's look at metrics. Like users that use Word, are they looking to deal with tabular data? Are they looking to deal with tables and formulas and whatever? Probably not. Users that use Word are looking to write books. They're looking to write reports. They're looking to write documents. They're looking to long-form text with paragraphs like they would read in a book. Is that the vision? Because if the vision for Word over time becomes, well, through the data, oh boy. I don't normally introduce new ideas into the podcast, but when I do, it's nearly an hour in.
I love that meme.
Hey, through our data, we see that most people that use Word are embedding tables in the application. So we need a new application that specifically deals with tables. We're going to call it Excel. Here we are. Welcome to 1993.
Right. Yeah. So I think you've just gone somewhere where my head was going in terms of cannibalization. We're all familiar with products that have a freebie version, and then they put the carrot in front of you and go,
sure.
You can do this, do this, do this. Oh, upgrade to Pro.
Sure.
Right. That's one way of making sure you have product segmentation. You don't cannibalize the one product by having, segments, right? For the free one, yes, you give them some things that actually work great, but more importantly, you put the lolly in front of them, as we say in England, right? Dangle the carrot to say, you can do this too. Isn't this fantastic? You can do this. It's just $2 a month or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then if you want to do a little more, then it's only $10 a month, right?
Yeah, but that decision to go with a different product or to split out this piece to a different offering, that is a data-driven decision. Let's say that 45% of people who use Excel use it to make grids, which are just going to copy paste into a document and publish or whatever. Okay, well that's data that we didn't have before. Maybe we want to make the import from one product to another a big thing. Or maybe we're going to want to give this some kind of automatic wizard functionality or whatever. I'm a wizard.
You need a hat.
Oh, man. Oh, speaking of wizard, if you liked our podcast on wizards and lizards, you should subscribe to our new game. Oh, never mind.
Your point is extremely valid.
The point is, if you're even going to create a separate product, there should be data leading you to how did that product get created in the first place. I know we started with Word and Excel, which is probably terrible examples because those there probably are people listening to this podcast. Actually, statistically, most people that listen to this podcast were born after Word and Excel both were products live in the ecosystem.
Yeah, and I'm one of them. I absolutely agree. So I think the point you make...
No, we're not.
I'm very young. What am I talking? No.
2,000 years later.
The point you make about these product decisions being data-driven is extremely valid.
Sure.
Right? The only time you might want to venture a product out in the field is just to gather data.
Sure.
Right. In that case, that's like the initial state where you're looking to see what will stick. Use all of the tools at your disposal to gather data, and then use that data to formulate a strategic direction for the product.
Sure.
But when it comes to cannibalization, I don't see how you get away from trying to figure out who your core personas are for users of each of the products, and then looking at those in two different ways. One is, can we make sure that we can still sell both products to two different personas? That's one question. And the other question, I think, is the opposite of that, which is, if I make this product the Swiss Army knife of everything, then now who's my customer, right?
Yeah.
That's tricky sometimes to pull off.
Well, if you make your product the Swiss Army knife, now the problem is not like, hey, I guess like the pushback against what you just said is everybody who wants both will want your product. Well, that's not true, because now your product is going to be crappy at both. Like it might not be crappy. It might be good at like one thing for feature A and 2 things for feature B, whereas another competitive product is like 8 things for feature B.
Right.
Because you're context switching your development team now between feature A and B. Because you if we go back to Microsoft Word / Excel, okay, I'm gonna have a great word processing application, and I'm gonna have a great spreadsheet processing application. Or I'm gonna have one crappy half a Word document application and a tabular whatever record application, which is not really super great at either or. Like, that's probably the cleanest way to get this point across, is to say, hey, do you want to have one application that kind of crappily does both? Or do you want to have 2 applications that one is fantastic for formatting whatever, and it's like just bad at tabular whatever. Like, you add the tabs to your Word document, you can never get the columns right. It's difficult to select an entire column because it messes up and selects the entire thing at a time. That's right. I've used Excel and Word in my life. Or do you want to optimize for one audience, and maybe you can do 2 or 3 things, but there were a bunch of applications over the past that kind of partially did both, and they're all gone now.
They're in the product graveyard, resting permanently. Yes, that's the quickest way to obscurity, right? Because to your point, your competitors will definitely eat your lunch because you're not doing anything. You're not excelling at anything. You're kind of you're doing okay on this and not so good on this. Right. Yeah.
And that brings us back to where you started, which is know your audience. Brings us back to what I call user segmentation, which is, who are the users that want to write Word documents? Who are the users that need their data shown in a tabular format, in tables, and are those users the same? Oh, no, they're not. Oh, these people over here that need tables, they're mainly finance people, accountants, data scientists, data analysts, whatever. And the people over here that need Word documents are people that write books and technical documents and whatever else. They're completely different. Okay, well, if they're completely different, why do we even try to create the same application for both of them? Let's just make it easy on our development teams and just split our development team and say, okay, you developers go over here and make yourselves experts in this type of user, and you few members of the development team move over here and split off, and you make yourself experts on this. So what we end up with is a development team dividing, and team A becomes expert at people trying to write full length documents, and team B becomes experts at people trying to work inside of tabular data.
Yeah. So before the 2 people who are about to type and kind of nasty things.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the 2 people watching the video.
No, there's at least 8. No, before those 2 chime in, let me just say what you're not proposing is you're developing 2 distinctly different products. You're developing 2 products, each aimed at a specific purpose. However, certain modules are shared, like printing, spell check, whatever. Those kinds of things. Save as PDF is another example.
Wait, let me stop you because I'm not clear. You're saying I am proposing?
No, I'm saying you're not.
I am proposing different applications, but I think what you just said is there will be shared functions between both applications. Now, I'm saying both the applications, but what I really mean back in the spirit of this bullet point was, in our suite of products, we're saying everything in our suite of products should have these text functions, these print functions, these whatever functions, everything in our whole suite of applications. But each suite of applications is for a specific user.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So these common functions, they are enablers that allow you to put these different products and call it a suite, because people can easily use one having used another one.
Sure, yeah.
Right? So their barrier to entry is much, 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 much lower. Their learning curve, all of that. That's how you end up with a suite that sells well. So those people that are writing lots of prose and the authors, right, using the Word application,
Sure.
should they need to do some occasional spreadsheet type work, they can buy that other module called Excel, and they'll be familiar with basic functions, how to open a document, how to print, things like that, how to save.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. The last thing we had was estimates burned down in hours, but we can turn it into a separate podcast. Agile podcast questions at Gmail. We have not said that in a long time.
We have not.
Oh boy.
Beyond estimation, if you live in the area, Tampa Bay area, let us know if you'd like to come on the show and argue Agile with us. And we sincerely hope you enjoyed this episode of Agile Potpourri.